All right, bows and bow ties. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for joining in. I want to talk a little bit about bridging the gap between our younger sisters and older sisters. Let me see if I can bring up what I should have brought this in, and I don't know why I didn't bring in what the thumbnail will look like. Hold on. Let's see. Let me add this in real quick. Okay, let's do this here. So what I'm getting ready to throw up on my screen here is what the thumbnail looked like. And I actually like this thumbnail. So what you see is what kind of sort of looks like younger women on the left, and I would say slightly seasoned women on the right. They don't really look old, but I think they could pass off as aunties. There's a bridge on here. And basically, I'm just talking about sisterhood, okay? And so one of the things I wanted to I want to talk about sisterhood because right now, um, I'm thinking about Black women in terms of how there's a lot going on. We're being attacked from the men in the whacked out weirdo manosphere and all that good stuff. And I think that has to run its course. In the meantime, I notice a lot of things when it comes to women and this lack of sisterhood and like what is it and why it seems like there's so much vitriol. Now, granted, much of what we see on television has been curated. It's not the best image. I think my favorite one that would show this level of shenaniganry. Can I make up words? The shenanigans would probably be Married to Medicine. I haven't been watching it in recent times because I don't like seeing. Same thing with the Housewives of Atlanta, and I said, and even the new the Potomac. I have not watched either of those. Those franchise shows in like a season or two because I've just been worn out with the silliness. But what you see on here is a lot of women tearing each other down, and also even when someone is older, I don't see them bridging that gap with our younger ladies. So first, let me just get into this for a second. I want to bring up a couple of definitions here. We're going to talk about first, womanhood is like those qualities associated with being a woman, and much of what I want to get into is like talking about going from girlhood into womanhood, right? When you have a bunch of like young children, and as they start to get into that teen area, you want to start explaining things and showing things, right? And how you show them, and I have a point to this, is some of it's through heuristics, okay? So I'm going to bring up two definitions of what heuristics are. The first one you see on the screen is enabling someone to discover or learn something for themselves. This is a much longer one, and I'll just tell you, and I'll shorten it in a second. The second definition of heuristics is the mental shortcuts that can facilitate problem solving and probability judgments. These strategies are generalizations or rules of thumb that reduce cognitive load. Now, usually when I mention heuristics, I just say those rules of thumb. Now, where am I going with this when I talk about rules of thumb? You know how to act or perform when you go to work, right? There's a certain type of culture, you learn through observation. No one tells you, hey, this is like when you can or should raise your hand during a meeting, right? You kind of learn and you observe. You learn the types of things that should be said outside of meetings too, right? You learn how to behave. Like you're told when you're younger, don't do this. And as you get older, you learn through observations and experiences, right? Now, so those are the two definitions I brought up for heuristics. Basically, they're rules of thumb. They're not chiseled in concrete, but you kind of get an idea of like, probably not, it's like learning how to read the room. Okay. I have a note on here. Where was I going with this? I have a note to myself that says sisterhood. I didn't talk about sisterhood yet. Let me stay with this for a second. So the purpose of why I'm having this live was I wanted to talk about sisterhood, okay, and what it is, and how we need to help bridge this gap between the generations. And really, I should have had the older generation on here too. So, sisterhood, the definition that I'm going to flash, and then I'll just speak to what I've written. It's a bond shared between women who have a similar, what do I have up here? Bondship between women with a shared community or experience. So basically, what I would say sisterhood is when you have a collection of shared experiences within a community. Same thing, just reworded. Okay. What I have written down here was kinship amongst sisters. You can find that online. Being in solidarity with one another, and it's like a universal experience among women. Um, this is what I want to say. I think sisterhood is important to help with womanhood. Okay. I think sisterhood helps within your age group and in your relationship with other age groups as you come through the various stages of womanhood. So the title, Bridging the Gap, Younger Woman Needing Sisterhood from Seasoned, it says Seasons Sisters. Let me change that. Like, hold on a second. It should be seasoned, seasoned sisters. Save that change there. All right, the stream must be scheduled. Oh, okay. Well, it won't let me change it midstream. All right, whatever. So, but it's like I think that they need that sisterhood as we come through the various stages of womanhood. You start out as a child, you're told what you can and cannot do. And then as you get older and your body is changing and your hormones are changing, your feelings are changing, and you start to have these conversations about, well, what are you feeling? Well, what do you think? Do you think you made a good choice? You start to observe how women act around men, how women act in professional environments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of those things is I feel like we don't have enough conversations. I don't think we are interacting enough. And partially because families and communities are fractured, they're broken. So the interactions are not there. Now, a lot of people don't like when I bring up um the church or whatever in the past, right? But that was a built-in community. So what happened was we were constantly together. The kids were together, adults were together, the older people were together. We saw how the older people were in church, and when there was a church function or a fish fry or whatever, I don't know, like there was always something. You saw how we interacted, you saw how we greeted each other, right? We never said, hey, or our older aunties that say that with earmarks, we never went up and said, okay, now I'm going to go up and give so and so a hug. What you saw was the women when they were greeting each other, the way they went up and greeted each other. Hey, baby, how you doing? Whatever. You saw the softness. You heard the change in their voice, right? You heard the warmth. You heard the sweet cackle. You saw the hugs, and then you saw how women interacted with men. It's a different type of softness, right? You saw how men interacted with women, but you saw how the body changed, how you stood, like all those things. And those are things you learn through heuristics, through your experiences, through observations, the little rules of thumb, right? You didn't see certain things, right? You saw other things. Where am I going with this? So one of the things I want to talk about was I wrote down a few notes. I want to talk about why sisterhood is important. One of the things was like with confidence and resiliency. Okay. So what do my notes here say? So one of the things that I've learned when I was growing up was when I saw women who um, suffered setbacks, or there were roadblocks, and how they didn't get down. They named it. But you know what it was? You know what they did? Like just watching how they said, okay, this is how we're going to get around it. This is how we're going to do these things. Or how when people hurt you, or like you know what? And I'm going to even just take it back to within the last 10 years. Um, I was in this tennis community. I played a lot of tennis, and there were some women who were older than me that were actually pretty cool. They were seasoned sisters. I don't know why I love these women so much, because they were just funny to me. Like they were just, I don't know, I loved them. There were women who were in my age group, maybe even younger. Believe it or not, I think there was, I don't want to call it jealousy. Well, there's a couple of them, but they had issues with these women, but I didn't. And I remember I went through a situation where, and I was really disappointed. I was playing tennis back in my fitter finer younger days, and I remember there were a group of individuals who they spread some nasty, vicious. um, lies about me. It was like, and the things that they would talk about me was like so ridiculous. Now, the stuff that was being spread about me, they didn't realize it was getting back to me. Multiple people, they were like, these are not your friends. And I was like really shocked that they would do that. But what was interesting was I remember how some of these older women, how they were really cool. They were like, but it's not true. We know it's not true. They were like, why are you worrying about these people? Just cut it off then, because clearly they don't want good for you. Like, right. But the way they would talk to me was so, like, I wasn't like this baby or anything, but the way they handled me, like, I don't even want to say kid gloves. That's not the word I'm gonna use. Like there was like such a warmth and a gentleness about it. They were like, oh honey, girl, you need to just go on out here and do this, that, and the other. Let them talk. And I was like, but they're spreading this, that they were like, don't engage with that. They were like, why would basically what they were like saying was like, why are you dedicating cycles to it, right? But there were some other things they said. They were like, let me tell you the reason why they're saying these things. And they broke it down. And I still was like, but they were like, there's no but. Multiple ladies, but the way they handled me and they brought me in, because you know what? First of all, I wasn't a threat to them. As far as they were concerned, I was still a baby to them. They were like, "Oh, you're our baby." Like I was like almost like a baby sister. But I like how they were like, they were explaining things. Like they were saying, "Okay, this is how you move past this, right? You don't have to do X, Y, and Z. Number one, consider X." They don't tell you exactly what they do, but they kind of like lead you there and they give you suggestions and they show you. They were like, "Well, you don't have to do these things." They showed you options. I think when you have older people when I say older, I should say seasoned people showing you certain things and how they uplift you in the process. I remember how they were uplifting me. It wasn't like I had low self-esteem, but they continued to uplift me. And they were like, you just need to walk through it and move past it. Like they were showing me without telling me, like, this is how you come through with the level of resiliency. You're made of the tough stuff. But I just think that they also provided me with a safe space, you know, and I feel like when you have that sisterhood, when you have a collection of shared experiences within a community, because they've been down that road before. One of them in particular was letting me know about like some of the shenanigans that was done and things that were said about her. And she was like, you think I care? I'm gonna continue to do me. Oh, she was bad too, by the way. I want to be like her when I get to her age. Like she was like a former model, and I was like, yeah, she was amazing. But it was interesting because when she's already had these experiences, and I was watching how she moved, and I was like, oh, I love that. I was able to watch how she moved. So, and how she moved with such confidence. And she clearly was built of the tough stuff. I mean, she was Ford tough. I mean, like, where I wish I had that little clip, like that ching, how that commercial is, and it's like stamps Ford tough. But the way she moved and the way it was just like duck feathers, like water was just coming off her. She was like, I was like, oh my gosh, she was amazing. But just being open to that relationship and for her to pour that into me and some of her friends, right? The way they poured into me. And I've had some other women in like a professional set, only maybe one or two, in a professional setting pour into me. Right. And it was cool because I don't normally get that. I don't normally get that. I just thought that for her, she was able to let me know. Well, multiple people, they helped. They wanted to make sure they were um, showing me that I could be resilient. And it doesn't mean that I don't have feelings, but also showing me how you walk through these situations with a level of confidence. Really cool. I think we need more of that. I don't necessarily have all the answers on how to get there, but I think for one, we have to be willing to be available to pass that on. So right now, I'm not sure if I still have some of those videos and some of my earlier content. I was talking about how we don't create other content, and I was talking about how the younger versions of us, the women, it's like they're clearly searching. They're searching for something. They're searching for what is femininity. How do I be seen in today's world. They're searching for something, and we are not letting them know that they are seen. We are not helping to instill that level of confidence. We're not showing them that they can be resilient. You still have feelings, but you don't have to be forward tough all the time, right? We are not, I don't think we're sharing enough of that. And I don't even know if they're open, but I know they're searching for something. It's clear in the type of content that they make, it's clear in the music that they're making. We're not showing that sisterhood. But I think we have to find a way to bridge the gap. And it starts with being available to these women. But I'm going to move on to the next point. Okay, so I was talking about building confidence in relationships. I'm going to talk about barriers for a second. It's kind of related. So first I was talking about building confidence and resilience, but I'm going to talk about barriers. I remember I was guarded for a very long time, and I had a collection of experiences that would cause me to be guarded. But I remember in my career, I ran across this woman who was older than me, probably by about 10 or 15 years. And I don't know how she was able to get to me, but she was really cool because I didn't get that too often from older Black women professionally. And this is where I would say, like I said, being available helps. I ran into her. She, for whatever reason, she just gave me this opportunity to be on a panel where I was able to speak with um, engineering, women in engineering. And we started talking. And I remember I said to her that I don't know too many other Black engineering women. She said, I know some. I said, you need to introduce me to these women. And she said to me, I can. But then she said something that kind of got next to me for a second. She said, they're not ready for you. I didn't know how to take that at first. So I just stared at her. She was like, no. She was like, you need to meet these women. But what she was saying to me was, they've got their mess and you've got yours. So I was trying to figure out what did that mean. And what she was saying is, you have terms of you're confident in your capability, but I'm also guarded in being vulnerable with other women. So she kind of like called it out. She was like, you have to learn how to be open a little bit. And she told me, because you are the way you are, in terms of like, when I was younger, my lead at the time happened to be a Black guy, by the way. He told me, I'm going to treat you like my daughter. And I was like, what does that mean? And he said, with my daughters, I raised them to be sharks, not guppies. So that was how I was mentored at the time. So I was mentored to be a shark, but I lost some of that other stuff too. So this woman, when she was reaching out to me, she was talking to me, what she said was, you got to learn how to give a little bit. So you got to allow for room, for space for other women too, meaning you don't have to be so like, 'cause I was just like, boom, like that, right? And she was trying to show that like there's another way. And so then she said, also the way you look, back in my Fit or Fine on Your Days. So she was saying like that's a lot for a lot of people who basically want to be seen too. And she was saying that I would take over. Okay. So she was like, you have to learn too. And I was offended because I was like, you're trying to say blah blah. She was like, no, I'm not. She was like, you're a lie. Not, she was like, you gotta back off a little bit. Meaning like, she's like, what happens is, she's like, that's a different type of insecurity you have because you're letting people know that you know. And she was like, you don't have to. It'll show. She's like, you don't have to be like that. And so imagine having to swallow that. And she was like, they're not ready. And you're not ready. And she was like, but you need to meet some of these other engineers. But the point I'm getting at was, she was showing me like, and she didn't use these words, but she was like letting me know like everyone gets to choose how they want to show up. Okay. And she was like, is this how you want to show up? Do you want to be that tough? Because you can be good and you don't have to be so tough. And it took a while for me to, it was rough because I had to be more vulnerable. and no one wants to put themselves in a position to be vulnerable. But when you have a woman, when you have women who are willing to show you, who are available, and they're like, okay, look, sis. So I remember she spent time like eating lunch with me. I went to a couple of events with her. She had me on panels. She was having me come out to work with her on different things. Like she poured energy into me. It wasn't like she was getting anything out of it. And I learned a lot because she was like, that's a form of insecurity you have. And I was like, I'm not insecure. She's like, you're not insecure in terms of your capability. You're insecure in terms of how you think people see you, how you're basically showing up. Where I'm going with that was, I think with the younger women, they don't get an opportunity to really interact with some of the more seasoned women because one, I don't think people are making themselves available. I don't think both sides, well, from a younger perspective, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to accept some of the criticism, but you have to be willing to accept when they want to build you up too, right? And so when I talk about the younger women with some of the older women, like I'm now middle age, I still needed that from people who were older than me. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example of a shared experience, some wisdom. I remember when I was married for a few years, and I remember, you know how like when people get together and the women, for whatever reason, they tend to separate off and the men separate off because I don't know what we're doing. I'll never forget how okay, so I'll tell you what the lesson was. I was upset about something that my husband did, and I don't talk about my marriage stuff, but it was something silly, but like it was like haha funny. And one of the ladies said to me, I had never heard the story before. She was like, have you heard of the magic water? I was like, what? What's the magic water? And she said, oh, your husband, oh gosh, I forgot what it was. She was like, she said something. She said, you should pour yourself some of this water. I was like, why would I do that? She's like, then drink it. She was like, do it now. And so I poured some water. I started drinking it. She was like, did you get it? And I was like, I couldn't say anything because I was drinking the water. I was like, what do you want me to do? She was like, catch what you just said. She said, sometimes you can be right, but be wrong. Instead of proving that you're right, she's like, take a pause. So when you're drinking water, you can't talk if you're drinking. And she was just saying, sometimes say nothing. They'll get it. She was like, you don't have to talk. Because if you're right and it's clear, she was like, sometimes you can lose by running your mouth. It doesn't mean you have to be a doormat, but sometimes you have to be able to read the room and realize not right now. And she's called it the magic water. Now I'm butchering the story because it was much more eloquent when she said it at the time. But the point was she took that time for everybody and everybody was hee-haw. And I was like, really? That's how you gonna do me like that? But she took the time to say, you know, when you are in a covenant, when you're in a marriage with somebody, believe it or not, sometimes it's okay to say nothing. It doesn't mean you don't bring it up because it works on both sides. And she was like, you don't have to prove that you're right, even though you're right. She was like, but you don't have to prove it right then and there because like there was no upside to that because everybody was still mad. So she was like, no. She was like, now she had been married much longer than me. I had only been married for like, I don't know, maybe 3 years or whatever. She was like, it's called the magic water. Sometimes just don't talk. And trust me, they figure it out. She was like, because sometimes it's what to look like, really. Little things like I don't emasculate my husband in public behind closed doors. We used to get down, not get down, but you know what I mean. I'm like, well, first of all, but the point I'm making was when you're talking about a sisterhood, you have to make yourself available to other groups of women. We have to make ourselves available. Number two, they have to be vulnerable enough, willing to be vulnerable. We're not giving each other that. We're not giving each other grace, at least not if you're going by what you see on television. There is no grace given to women. I'm talking about within Black women communities. I'm weeding out the noise. This isn't for everybody. We don't give each other enough grace. We don't make ourselves vulnerable for each other. And I would say within our own age groups, we're so busy trying to be seen and tear each other down and shading and reading. And I'm talking about en masse. I'm not talking about if you have relationships with people and if this doesn't apply, then let it fly, right? I watch how when you look at things in mass, like when women make mistakes, They end up in relationships with men that don't work, and then instead of both parties being held accountable, it's always the woman being held accountable. And now we call the women, you're nothing more than a baby mama. I'm like, no, she's a mother. She's a mother. You know, they get mad at we get mad at women for saying like, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that, instead of saying, okay, it happened, so how do we make this change? We don't give each other grace when people make a mistake and they go back into these bad relationships, right? Instead of saying, hey, look, you know where we stand. Like, come on, like, I need you to love yourself. But sometimes loving people through their trials and tribulations, right? We want to judge all the time. You got the whole Kiki Palmer situation with the father of her child. She may or may not be going back to him. I don't know. It's not my business, obviously. But when people are going through things, they're in these relationships and they're trying to sort out how they feel about the person. And maybe even if it's best for them to separate, but feelings are involved, you know, it's hard. And so when people want to start going hard on people and we don't give women enough grace, even when they make a mistake again, I'm not saying if they're doing it for 20 years, but what I'm saying is we don't do that. We don't make ourselves available to these women, and we don't allow, and we're not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. So I feel like we need to connect with these women and share our experiences so that they understand when we are having these conversations that is coming from a place where like, I've been where you are and I know how this feels. Or I haven't done what you have, but hey, have you considered this? Hey, I know you've made mistakes, but why don't we consider this moving forward? I just feel like we have to find a way to make ourselves available, and those younger women need to be willing and vulnerable. What else was I going to say? One of the things that I thought younger women and older women, or at least the aunties or whatever, we need to figure out how to show younger women what does nurture look like, whether it's with children, whether it's whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like at this point, because there's been this massive pendulum shift towards women wanting to be boss babes and or bees. um I think women right now, at least Black women, they're fighting so hard to be seen. So everyone's got the same BBL, the same fake hair, even though I've got fake hair too. I got extensions. Everyone's got the same lips, the same eyebrows, the same lashes, the same wig. Everyone's got the same long, pointy nails. Um, because I think these women think that's what being seen is. And we have not, I don't think we've shown what is being seen, right? And it doesn't help when they're looking to television to see that, because look at all of our reality TV shows. All the women have the same hair. They have the same hair, the same BBL, the same makeup. Look, we've got women. This is going to be a total sidebar. I look at the women. Well, I don't watch the show anymore, but I look at the women on the Potomac, the brown skin ones. Wendy and Candace. I mean, I was blanking on their names. I look at them and I see they don't even wear their own shade of makeup. They're like 3, 4, 5 shades lighter than what they are. They are so busy trying to assimilate. They want to be seen. And I don't see anywhere anyone saying, hey, you don't have to do that. You are enough, right? You're going to be seen regardless. But these young women, this is what they're seeing on television. They're like, look, I better get out here and look like everyone else because this is what it means to be seen as a Black woman. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to laugh at your pain. I'm going to shade you. I'm going to tear you down in order to light my own fire. There's no nurturing happening on these shows. There's no real like, hey, how are you doing? How are you trying to show up in this world, right? What is happening here? We don't do that. We don't see it. We see like hey, I have to compete for these limited resources, whether it's for a man, whether it's for a job, whether it's for airtime, a check, whatever it is. I have to compete for this. So the only thing I can do that is I have to morph into what society says is a good Black woman. And then I have to make sure I elevate myself by putting you down. We don't nurture any relationships. There's no nurturing happening. It's not. Um, we don't praise each other enough. We don't support each other enough. So going back to what I said, we have to bridge the gap, right? The older women have to be willing to mentor. They have to be willing to guide and nurture. And the younger women have to be willing to receive it. And they also have to be vulnerable too. I don't see that happening. Like I said, based on what I think is happening, I think the younger women want to be seen. They want to be seen, and the way they're showing it is in how they groom themselves. Like we haven't even shown younger women how to groom themselves anymore. They think grooming is okay. Now here comes my hypocrisy. Go get some fake hair. Go get some fake hair and make sure that your makeup is as light as you can go without looking totally washed out. AKA Serena Williams. Um, um, make sure our makeup is not us. And it's like basically we have to look close to being a drag queen as possible. hmm We have to look because, like it's so extreme. And then we have to make sure not only is our aesthetic as close to being a drag queen as possible, we want to be as Eurocentric as possible. Hence my hypocrisy with my braids here. But that's what we're doing. And then we're mean. I always tell my daughter, say what you mean and mean what you say without being mean. We talk about that a lot. I also say, how do you want to show up in this world? This is a choice, right? So when you're this way, I'm like, is this how you want to be viewed? But then I have to love her too. I have to love her through her transition from girlhood to womanhood. In order to get that, you have to provide a level of sisterhood in order to love somebody through the various stages of womanhood. So I had to tell her, for example, she went through something in school where she had like a lunch detention and some other nonsense because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. And I explained to her, I said, when I was in 6th grade, I used to be called mouth because I would not shut up. The teachers were like, hey, mouth, mouth. And then she laughed. I was like, you think I wanted to be called mouth? Now, granted, this is at a much lower level, this is age appropriate, but the point I was making, telling her was, I was like, look, I've been down this road before. Is this what you want? I said, I had to do work to repair relationships and fix perceptions with the teachers. So again, that requires me to be available to my daughter or any young Black woman. They have to be willing to receive that information, right? That's how we bridge the gap between the generations at this point. That's how we create the relationship. And then what you do is, in order to be in sisterhood, as we're all coming through the various stages of womanhood, right? I have to share my experiences. She's going to have to learn through heuristics, those rules of thumb that says, okay, I'm going to watch. Just because she didn't tell me, okay, in this situation, you're going to do this, she's going to observe. We have to be available to these younger women so that they can observe, so they can see femininity isn't just makeup. Femininity is a lot of things. I would tell you, let me say this. I'm sitting here right now. I've got on some dry skin vegan salve. I got this from I think the dentist. You know how they have the free like chapstick. This is my makeup for right now. Doesn't mean I won't wear something earlier. My hair is braided and needs to be rebraided. Look at this. I make big parts because I like having a hairline, right? But for me, everybody's different. For me, I'm going to bring my hair up. If you see this, I want you to look at my hairline for a second. It's not slicked down. I got to fix my sideburns. You see this? This is a whole, wait. This is the whole sideburn situation. But in our community right now, what is considered feminine and beautiful is it has to be super slick back. You see this? We can't have any hair. We've got to be super made up. That's what's feminine. That's what's glam. And those things are feminine and glam, but there's a lot of things that are feminine and glam. But I'm sitting here, I have nothing on other than my dry skin vegan salve free chapstick and some overhead light. And for today, in my opinion, that's good enough. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't ever turn up and put, you guys just don't normally see it, right? But the point is, it's like femininity doesn't have to look like all this other stuff. But in order for them to get that, they have to see it over and over and over again. They got to see it in the media. They got to see it on social media. They got to see it in their personal lives. What does grooming look like? One of the things I talk about is like my daughter is noticing from different cultures or groups of people how they groom themselves and how some don't groom. I'm like, and that's something that they have to be shown in their community, right? You have to wash every day and wash your hair and those kinds of things. And there's certain people like they have to learn that. They have to be shown that, right? So if they're not being shown that in their family, they don't learn that. So then they're going to have to learn it in other groups. The point I'm getting at, because I'm getting off topic, is we have to bridge the gap between the younger and the older groups of people. Where's that thing again? There goes that thumbnail. You got the younger woman on the left, supposedly, and older aunties, whatever, on the right. Sisterhood goes both ways. Sisterhood goes both ways, right? Because older women can learn from younger women too. I learn from some of the younger ones all the time. My husband's nieces and my niece, well, my niece from my side, she's a little younger. She's only like, what, 23, 24, but she cracks me up and I learn some things. But then my husband's nieces and nephews are a little older. I learn from them too. Sisterhood goes both ways. We have to bridge the gap. Anyway, one of the things I talked about, I said, we got to figure out how we want to show up. We got to remove these barriers. We got to help build confidence and resiliency, right? We show and we got to build them up. Don't tear them down like how it's seen in reality TV. These women don't care. They care about how they are exalted for shade, reading, and dragging women, and they're comfortable with that. I said that we have to share our experiences, show our wisdom, and then we got to show what does nurture look like, what does growth look like. It's like allowing grace, even when they did something wrong. It's saying, okay, you know what? Let's do this over. Okay, like this is how we start all over. Yeah, you messed up, but come on. Okay, let's try to make this right. Instead, we want to ostracize people. We want to shame people. We think that's the way to get people to do better. And it can work, right? I'm looking at my hair. Look at this situation. You see all this? I'm used to wearing it up in a little bun. So now my hair is like this all the time in the back. Anyway, that's where I'm going with it. I mean, I feel like I've said enough. I've been running my mouth. But getting back to, I see there's somebody here. I'm just going to say this one more time, and then I'm going to get off. What I said was, womanhood are those qualities associated with being a woman, right? So it's, what does it mean when you're a girl, as a young lady, and as an older woman, whatever. There's those, whatever that means, right? And in order to go through womanhood, the various stages of womanhood, of growing and maturing, you got to have sisterhood. And that means you want to make sure you have a bond with women who have a shared community and a shared collection of experiences. And then they can observe through heuristics. Okay? Basically, those rules of thumb, things that are observed. That's where I'm at with it. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I don't know if this was meaningful or useful for somebody, but I feel like it has to be said. There is not enough content talking about sisterhood and womanhood. And I may not have done it justice, okay? But these are just some of my both thoughts on it. Hopefully somebody will comment and give me, I mean, look, I'm open. I don't have all the answers. I think this might be some of the answers. Or these might be some of the answers. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and have a good one. And hey, look, like this video. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe, tell all your friends, and then go back and watch all of my videos. Share it with everybody. Bye.